I found my sister shivering on the kitchen floor at 2 a.m., and when she told me who touched her, I realized the law wasn't going to save us. My sister Clara came home at 2 a.m. with her dress torn open and her spirit shattered, screaming for me to help her as she collapsed onto the floor. I could feel her whole body trembling against mine, her skin cold and her breathing ragged as she kept throwing up on our carpet from the pure trauma of what had just happened. Clara is a prosecutor, a woman who stares down the most dangerous criminals in the city every single day without flinching. But in that moment, she looked like a terrified child rocking back and forth on our couch. She kept apologizing to me for ruining my night, which broke my heart, while I tried to keep my own hands from shaking as she told me about the monster who had cornered her outside a club bathroom. He was a mountain of a man, reeking of expensive whiskey, who used his size to pin her against a wall while the thumping club music drowned out her screams for mercy. The most sickening part wasn't just the assault, it was the justice she received afterward. When Clara found security and pointed out the man laughing in the VIP section, the bouncer just looked her in the eye and shrugged, asking what she expected him to do without witnesses. He leaned in close and whispered that the guy was the club owner's nephew, so she should probably just go home and sleep it off, because it wasn't that big of a deal. Clara knew the system she worked for had failed her. Rich guys with the right last names don't face consequences in dark hallways where the cameras are conveniently broken. I felt a rage building in my chest that I didn't know I was capable of, but I also knew I didn't have the power to touch a man like that. That's when I remembered my father, a man who had spent 30 years working the roughest construction sites in the city and kept trophies from his boxing days in a garage that smelled like oil and old secrets. I drove to his house the next morning while Clara was finally asleep and showed him the photo of the nephew from the club's Instagram, flashing his watches and his arrogant smile. My dad didn't scream. He just set his coffee mug down so hard it cracked across the table and made 3 short, quiet phone calls to names I had never heard of. 3 days later, that untouchable nephew was found in a dumpster behind his uncle's own property, with both hands shattered in multiple places and his ribs crushed so badly he could barely breathe. But the real justice came when the police received an anonymous tip leading them to his apartment, where they found hard drives filled with videos of at least 15 different victims he had kept as trophies. The clubs were shuttered, the uncle was arrested for bribery, and while my father never said a word about it, I couldn't help but notice the fresh, raw scars on his knuckles the next time we spoke. He taught me that when the law turns its back on the innocent, there are men from a different world who know exactly how to break the hands of a monster so they never hurt anyone again.